Hi everyone, this is Kelly Huggins at Change Management. Let me just welcome you to our Payroll Accounting Adjustment Tool webinar. This is known as PAAT. I know that there's been several communications that have gone out, so this is not a new name, but we're going to dive into some detail today. There is a step-by-step PAAT guide that has already been created, and that is out there like all of our other training documents and resources at the ccinfo.unc.edu website. And under the training menu, you would navigate down to resource documents. Today, including, in addition to myself, Kelly Huggins, I've got Robin Burke in the house. She's our Financial Business Systems Manager. If you want to say hi, Robin.
Hello, everyone.
And Chris Lawless, who also works with Robin. She's our Financial Business Systems Analyst.
Hello.
Good. So, why are we doing this? Well, PAAT is going live. We'll be able to use it starting tomorrow, October 28th. It's a big day for us, and we're all very excited. Just to be clear, this is our permanent payroll accounting adjustment tool, and I'll be referring to this tool as PAAT, which in any documentation or communications you'll see in all capital letters, PAAT. So what you need to know. PAAT is the new way to retroactively move a person's salary in a certain pay period to a different funding source or sources. PAAT replaces the temporary tool that we used that's been recently discontinued. And just to be clear, PAAT is not an EPAR. You'll still use the funding swap EPAR that's out there on Connect Carolina to make changes in the current pay period and for any future pay period. So that tool will still be used. So who is this webinar for? If you currently are using or did use the short-term retro tool, you're going to now start using PAAT to enter your retros. And if you were currently a budget approver for EPARs, you're still going to be a budget approver in the new PAAT tool. What you'll see in PAAT. The funding grid will have your basic and expanded tabs. So it's going to have a really familiar feeling for you all. You're going to be able to enter the amounts in the dollar format. Great feedback on being able to change multiple pay periods in one transaction. And you'll be able to copy those changes from one pay period to another rather than having to type them in individually, so that'll cut down on a lot of data entry errors. We also have 3 reports out there that you'll be able to use to help track your PAAT transactions. Here's some key points to remember. If you adjust state funds, all 3 levels in the approval path need to be approved. If you adjust funds with a project ID chart field less than 90 days from the pay end date of a paycheck, the adjustment does not require OSR's approval. And you'll still use the funding swap EPAR to make changes for the current or future pay period. So that means sometimes you may need to have one adjustment on both processes. You'll still have to do an EPAR form to make the change for now and future payments, but then you'll have to switch over to PAAT and enter the same type of adjustment for the past pay periods. Adjustments in progress. You know, there's some real easy tools in PAAT that help you track these, but a couple things to keep in mind. As soon as you navigate or as soon as you go to a pay period page for an employee, that pay period has been marked in progress. Even if you don't click the Save button, just by going to that pay period, you've begun to create a transaction. So that pay period is marked in progress. and no one else will be able to make any adjustments. So if you opened a pay period but don't need to make the adjustment, you actually have to take action at that point, change the status to cancel, and then click on Save. This will remove the in progress status and it frees it up for other people to use. More about PAAT. If an adjustment has been completed, you can perform another adjustment on top of it. You can increase or decrease a person's total funding using PAAT. That's nothing new. The adjustment still has to net to zero before the system lets you move forward. And like always, there is no limit to the lines of funding a person can have. We had to convert a lot of data, and they were tremendously successful. Fewer than 2% of the salary adjustments previously made using the short-term retro tool are still being converted into PAAT. So, you know, just about everything was converted. We're going live with this, but there's just a few that are out there. So if you happen to see the message excluded from PAAT, that particular, you know, lucky you got one of those particular adjustments that wasn't converted. And unfortunately, you're just going to have to wait until the team who is working to resolve these issues does this manually. So it may take a few weeks to get these adjustments incorporated into PAAT. Good thing though is it's a very small percentage. So let's dive in and take a look at entering a PAAT transaction. We're going to navigate one of two ways to the PAAT transactions form. You can do this using your menus like we always do and follow the breadcrumbs, so to speak. Or we do have the link situated under the HR Work Center, which you may find very convenient. They're under funding sources, and right now you can see where it says enter PAAT transactions, but also there are three other links: manage PAAT transactions, review pending transactions, and current suspense charges. So those last two will cover their reports at the end of the webinar. So here you go. Here's the form. The search fields in PAAT use the same filters as Connect Carolina. You can go ahead and enter your department number and click search to bring up a list of employees. Of course, if you have the PID and or the name, you can go in directly. PAAT will only show you about 4 or 5 lines at a time. So one of the things you want to remember is that you're going to have to use that View All link, and that will go ahead and display more lines, up to 99 lines. Then you can click on the employee ID of the person that you want to enter the payroll accounting adjustment for. When you see a row, you'll see all these pay periods. Again, PAAT is only showing about 5 lines of pay periods, but you can see that there are more. So if we click View All, the rest of the list will populate on the screen, and you can select the pay periods you want to adjust. Here we're clicking on 4 pay periods, and then you would click on the OK button. And I just want to take some time to point out some of the components of the PAAT transaction here. So right off the top, you can see that there are 4 tabs on the left side of your screen. The first one, we're on the Earnings tab. We'll talk about the notes, messages, and workflow throughout this webinar. We've gone ahead and started this process, so this form has a transaction ID. You can also see the status of the transaction is automatically assigned in progress. One of the things you may want to train your eye to do We selected 4 pay periods, so take a look. You can see that this is one of 4 pages. So each pay period is going to appear on its own page. So this connects with the pay period date you can see over on the left. If you drop down a little bit, you'll see the funding grid tabs. Very familiar. We see these all the time on the EPARs. You've got the same fields on your basic mode and your expanded mode as you see on the EPARs. Still have that plus sign for how to add a row on the funding grid. We do have an extra column here. It's called the override account. This is something that's used a bit more heavily by the advanced users. Most of the time for your basic users, your override account field is going to match the account field in your chart field. But sometimes when you're taking something off of Suspense, you may need to change that. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the Suspense report in just a few minutes. There's a justification button. It looks like a dialog bubble all the way over on the left side of each funding line. When you want to copy your adjustments from pay period to pay period, you'll use the copy feature. If you had selected too many pay periods when you were first organizing and trying to start your transaction, that's never a problem because you can delete a pay period very quickly by clicking on the minus button. And the Save button is on the bottom left. So just to go ahead and get started, you enter your adjustment as a negative amount. You click on the Add Row. It copies the row above it. On the Basic Mode tab, you can enter a different combo code and your positive adjustment amount. If you don't have the combo code, as you can imagine, go ahead and click on the Expanded Mode tab and enter the full chart field string. Important things to remember: the earning codes in your 2 lines of funding have to be the same. A justification is required when using OSR funding. And the difference between your adjusted amounts always has to net out and equal 0. So good thing for us, justifications are only required some of the time, not all of the time, and you'll need to use them when you're adjusting your OSR funding. And you can click on the dialog button on the left side, and you'll have to do it for each row, whether it's, whether you're increasing or decreasing funds, you'll have to enter the justification. These justifications and roles are the same that you've seen in the past, so there's nothing, there's no new option here. And then you're going to go ahead and click on the Save button. So at this point, the system does several things. It's going to check to make sure that your chart field strings and your combo codes are valid. It's also going to make sure that your adjusted balance equals 0. And it's going to make sure that the justifications have been entered when adjusting OSR funding. No exceptions. So if there is a project ID number, part of your chart field string, that's going to require a justification. Some of the things you may want to remember: if the chart field string is invalid or some type of data entry is invalid, the system may not let you go forward. It may not save what you've entered there. And also, there are different types of errors and messages, and the error messages are displayed on the Message tab, the ones that have to do with something other than a chart field not being valid. So here's just a screenshot of some errors. So that top box, you'll see errors were found, and it even directs you to go ahead and review them on the Message tab. And when you go to the Message tab, you can see it'll list it out. And if you look over to the right, you'll see this is one of one. So if you had multiple errors, and if you were doing a transaction that had multiple pay periods, you know, it's going to find all the errors, and you're going to go ahead and click on View All to see them listed at one time, or you'll have to page through them. Using the Copy to Pay Period option. In testing, this was very well received. So one of the things you want to see in our example here, we chose 4 pay periods. So the original grid that we were working on was for the pay period of 8-9, and then you can, it'll be over on the right side of your screen, the Copy to Pay Period feature. When you hit the drop down arrow, it'll show you all the other pay periods you selected, and you can just click on the next pay period to copy your payroll adjustment to. So one of the nice things about this feature is that you can pick what you want to copy. So if all the rows of funding aren't exactly the same from pay period to pay period, you may just want to copy the chart fields. But if you did have somebody who had a more simplified funding grid and it was okay, you could knock out a whole bunch of pay periods by copying both the chart fields and the amounts to each pay period. So you do have some options here. You would click yes to do both, the chart fields and the amounts. So an important thing to remember is if you click on Save before using the Copy to Pay Period option, you're going to ensure that the chart fields have already passed any type of combo edits and the justifications that you selected, if in fact you were using OSR funds, that they'll be copied over for each pay period too. Again, saving you steps, because you would have to do that individually if you didn't hit the Save button first. When you click on the Notes tab, this is where you could add comments like we already do on the EPARs. This is also where you can add your adjustments. Submitting the transaction. So you've finally gotten through this. You've entered the information on your funding grid, you've added some comments and notes, you've uploaded any attachments, you've clicked on the Save button, you're ready to go. You can submit the transaction one of 2 ways. If you're sitting on the Earnings and Notes tab, you can simply go to the Status drop-down menu, go ahead and choose Submit for Approval and click on the Save button. Or if you go to the 4th tab and click on the Workflow tab, there's a button there that just says Submit for Approval, and you can click on that. When you do that, the system will then very quickly show you a approval path that this transaction is scheduled for. So that's a good segue into talking about approvals. We've tried to streamline this process, and right now the only approvers that PAAT transactions are routed to are your financial approvers. Robin, do you want to add some commentary?
Yes, so the workflow for PAAT is driven by the fund, type of fund being retro. So if an OSR chart field stream has been changed and the adjustment is more than 90 days from the pay-in date of the paycheck, then it will route to OSR for approval. But if it is 90 days or less, OSR approval is not required. The approval path for non-state funds would be that it's going to route to your level 1 budget and level 2 budget approvers based on the current. Oh, thank you. Okay, let me get closer to the mic. So just to back up a slide, if an OSR project is retro, then if the adjustment is more than 90 days from the pay end of the paycheck, it will route to OSR. And if it is 90 days or less, OSR approval is not required. For non-state funds, it will route to your level 1 budget and level 2 budget approvers at the same time. And whichever approver gets to the retro first is the one that approves it. And if it's a level 1, then it's going to bypass level 2 approvals. If the level 2 budget approver gets to it first, it'll bypass level 1. You'll see it actually be stamped as auto approved. After it's approved by either level 1 or 2, it will route to the level 3 budget office. So we are recommending that due to these 2 levels being merged for PAAT, that you work with your departments and MOUs to formulate protocol for how these retros will be reviewed and approved. For example, an MOU or school might decide that any transaction charged to an OSR fund should always be approved at the department level, since the departments are more familiar with the ins and outs and details of the projects. For state funds, it's always going to route to level 1 first, and that level will be approved before it can route to the level 2 school division MOU level. After level 2 approves, it will route to the level 3 budget approval. One important change to note from the short-term tool is that level 3 budget office approval is required on every adjustment that generates a change to a non-OSR chart fill string. That does also include cost share. If a cost share chart fill string is being retroed, it will route to the budget office.
So, but UNC has a few different rules, right? So all GA PAAT adjustments will route to one department level approval, Department 105500. And approvers in the department satisfy all level 1 and 2 approvers for GA, and everything is going to go to level 3 for GA adjustments. So this is a picture of the workflow route, and so you can see that the approvers are displayed in columns. So the left-hand column, that would be your level 1, level 2 is in the middle, level 3 is on the right side, and what Robin was talking about before is you might have all of your level 1 and 2 all in the same lane, if you will. They'll be all in the same column. So, you know, the first person to hit it, that would satisfy it for that level. So how do you take actions? You know, what are your options in workflow? So as an originator, you've gone ahead and you've submitted your PAAT transaction. You've put it in the approval process. So as an originator, I could go to the workflow tab, and there will be a recycle button at the bottom, and that's how I can pull it out of the workflow process so I can make changes to it. No one else, just like with the EPARs, you know, no one else really can edit someone else's PAAT transaction. There are a top-level access was given to some super users. There are very few in number, and they're usually at the level 3 or always at the level 3. So it's really not an option out on campus to work on someone else's transaction. Only the originator can pull it out of workflow and then make the edits. An approver will also be able to go to the workflow tab. If I'm an approver, I'll have an approve button in addition to the recycle button. So you'll see these PAAT transactions hit your work list just like all your other EPARs. And there isn't a button there for you to, you know, terminate it or deny it or kill it. You just have the two options there, approve or recycle. So if you did want the transaction to be canceled because you want to free up those pay periods to be used in a different new transaction, you would have to recycle the PAAT transaction back to the originator, and then the originator could change the status to cancel, and that would free up those pay periods to be used in some different transaction, possibly by someone else. So just sort of touching on what Robin was talking about, when you click on the Approve button, your name on the list will show that you actually were the one to approve it, and all the other approvers in that column will be marked auto-approved. So it'll look something like that. You can see the bottom one with the approver, and the top three auto-approved. So let's take a look at some of the reporting options that we have in PAAT. Two of them are in Connect Carolina on the website there on the HR Work Center, and the last one is going to be available in Infoport. Chris Lawless.
So one of the reports that you may need to look at is to see what is currently pending, either for you or what may be pending going into the work list. So either from the breadcrumbs across the top or from the HR Work Center, you'll see an option for Review Pending Transactions. When you click on the link, you'll get the options to fill in. Do you want to pull it up for a specific department or for a school? You can also look for a specific project ID. Then the status, there are a couple different statuses. You could either ask for show me what is in progress or what is in needs approval, so it's already in the workflow process, or you can look at both of them at the same time by clicking the both option. Then you'll click on Generate Report. So let's go ahead and try one. We're going to enter a search criteria. We're going to pull up the Review Pending Report for School of Medicine, and we want to look at anything that's already in the workflow and is awaiting approval at one of the levels. So from our screen, we typed in the School of Medicine under our school, and we selected the option for needs approval. The results that we get, here's a screenshot of what it might look like for you. Each department is going to be grouped by itself, so at the top you see pathology. You see the department number and the department name are listed. Then it will give you a list of any of the transactions in PAAT under pathology. Here we have transaction number 726 for Susan Trainwell for her B14 cycle. It shows you who originated the action, who it's for, what pay period, what the status is. In this case, it's pending an approval. And we're currently awaiting the approval at the MOU or level 2 level, this being, School of Medicine. Beneath pathology, we have the cardiology group. There's one item under there for Josh McTrain. It's for his M4. Tells us who originated it, who it's for, what the action number is, and that it's currently pending approval. If we slid over to the right, which we can't do on the screen, it's actually awaiting approval by level 3 OSR. The left side of the screen will show you, can you jump back just a second?
Sure.
The retro transaction ID, you see number 726 under pathology or 686 under cardiology. You could click on that number and it would take you to the actual action itself if you needed to see more details about the action. Another report that you have access to is the current suspense charges. So if you needed to see anyone's payroll who is currently sitting in your suspense account 511190, then you can go to this report. Again, it's available either across the top in the breadcrumbs or on the left side of your screen under the funding sources in the HR Work Center. Much like the other report, you would go in and type in your department number, or you could put in the school. There is an option to show your $0 lines. This would be your employees who they may have already gone to suspense, but then they've been fixed. And if you just needed to see that yes, they are fixed and down to 0, you could use that button to do so. Once you've plugged in your department number or your school, you'll click the Show Report underneath that appropriate choice. When the results appear, there also will be a Download Report button that you can click on to get the entire report into Excel for the whole school or the department. Here's the results that we got when we asked for pathology, and it'll show all of the employees in PID order who has transactions, whether it be earnings, deductions, or taxes, that are currently in your suspense account that you need to get cleared. So at the top we have Susan Trainworth. She actually has 6 different cycles that have transactions posted to the suspense account. That you could either from the Enter PAAT Transactions list go and find Susan and select her pay periods, or you can use the new link that's on the left-hand side under the ID column to go ahead and have the system plug in Susan's name and PID for you. Each individual is exportable by themselves into Excel if you click on the top left grid on their name. So if you look to the very right of Susan, there we go, there's that little grid. You can export only Susan's to Excel if you didn't want to download the entire report. And then you just do your normal Enter PAAT transactions to correct the items out of suspense.
So we were talking about something earlier called the override accounts field.
Yes.
And we were talking specifically about those people who've hit suspense and the account 511190 that would be in that override account field.
Right. So because when you're entering a PAAT transaction, if you need to insert a new line, you click the plus button, and it inserts a new line and copies down all of the fields from the line above it. If you're clearing something from suspense and you add a new line, one of those fields that gets copied down is the override account, which in this case would be 511190. So when you're clearing your suspense item, you've inserted a new row, you've chosen a new chart field string or combo code, but the override account, you'll still need to adjust it manually to reflect whatever the appropriate account is. Usually, it should be matching your combo code. So if you are moving someone, SBA permanent employee, they were previously on the suspense line, the override account is going to come down as 511190. You need to manually adjust that to be 512120. There's not that many that you'd have to do this for. It's mainly suspense.
Great. And there's one other report that's out there that's available. This is called the Labor and Expense Report. This one is an InfoPort. It's under the HR application right now. You'll find it on the Payroll tab, and there's a new tab that says PAAT. And this is using the same filters that existed on the report that we were using in the short-term tool. So this is the same labor and expense summary here, and you can see the filters. You have your fund type, your fund code, your accounts, your department, your source. You can pick your payroll run ID, and also you can either type in a project ID number, you can type in an employee, and you'll get that information down below where it says labor and expense summary. If you look on the top left side of the screen, there's 3 levels of detail here. You've got 3 tabs. So the first tab, you're going to have your summary view. That's looking at everything at the department level. And then when you get over to the next tab, labor and expense detail, you'll start seeing that broken out per employee. And then the last tab there, it gives you the detailed codes for wages and taxes. What you can do to keep your filters intact on this InfoPort report is you can click on the highlighted areas when you get to this report, and what it does is it will switch you over to the next tab, but keeps those filters in place, so you're not always having to choose the department and the fund and the source. So you can see here that we went ahead and clicked on it. Now I'm on the labor and expense detail, and if I wanted to get over to even something more specific and look at some codes, I would click over here on the highlighted area and it would take me to the third tab. There's also a back button feature on this InfoPort report. So again, since you don't want to always have to re-enter your filters, you would just use this back link button here, and that would keep everything in place. So I bet there are some questions. Let me open it up to Deborah to see what's come through.
Okay, there are some questions, and the first one is, does this mean you can enter more than one the same day?
That's a great question.
If you're talking about more than one retro for the same paycheck, you can retro, that one paycheck has to go all the way to the general ledger before it's available to be retroed again.
Will it hit the general ledger multiple times during the day, or is that run nightly?
It's run nightly. So it is possible you could generate a retro on a paycheck, have it fully approved, send it to GL, and then it'd be available the next day for retro again.
Okay, next question. Is this system a part of Connect Carolina, or is it a standalone system?
This is a part of Connect Carolina.
Will the transaction ID show up on the monthly reports?
That's a great question.
I think that came up in training and testing, sorry, and no, it will not show up on the reports.
Can you adjust only half of one pay period for an EPA employee? This is when a grant starts in the middle of the month.
You can. You'll see the entire paycheck, the entire amount, and all the chart fill streams that funded that paycheck. So you'll have to do the math of what chart fill streams need to be retroed and for which amounts.
And that would also be a good place where you'd want to use your notes section to include this change is being made for the second half of September, for example, should there be any questions by the approvers.
Are there going to be written SOPs or job aids for using this tool?
So currently there are guides already posted on the CC Info website. So you want to go to the training menu and come down to resource documents. There's also a CBT that's in the works, and that's going to be posted ASAP. And then we're also going to take it probably one step further with tricky transactions as this proceeds and it goes live and we get some more experience on those one-offs.
When these transactions show up in the ledger, will the particular payroll be noted?
No, it will not.
Are we going to be able to adjust the earnings code via PAAT?
No, you have to retro within the existing earning code. You have to balance to zero for a particular earning code.
Yeah, that's very important. They have to match.
Are there specific deadlines or lockout periods that apply to PAAT transactions?
There's no lockout and no specific deadline other than the fact that, we'll be picking these retros up as they're approved throughout the day and distributing them. And then that one time a day around 5 o'clock, we'll start the process to budget check and send it to the general ledger. So I think it's going to be a work in progress as we go through these first few weeks to see exactly what the timing is like, and maybe we can set some guidelines around getting it in by a certain time, but for now, like I said, we'll be picking them up throughout the day and sending them to the general ledger at 5 o'clock.
Okay, will the PAAT tab show up in InfoPort tomorrow as well?
Yes, so this whole that's coming live tomorrow morning.
Will the budget and project end dates be checked by PAAT?
No, funding end date is not enforced in PAAT or budget end date. But there is a button where you can do a provisional budget check if you want to see if funds are available at that particular moment in time, but it will not tie up funds, and if you fail budget check, you'll still be allowed to proceed with submitting the retro.
How far back can we go?
To any payroll paid in PeopleSoft in Connect, Carolina. So MO4 of 2014, BO6 of 2014 is as far back as you can go.
And what about ones before that?
You are no longer able to retro payrolls paid in the legacy system.
And what about current or future?
So you're going to use the funding swap EPAR for anything that's in the current pay period or future pay periods.
Can we retro benefits only?
Yes, we have created a security role for a handful of users to be able to retro what is officially called deductions and taxes only.
So that would,
Yes, you'll be able to retro benefits only, but not everyone will have the ability to do that. That's been given to an advanced user designated by the MOU lead.
so there's 3 levels of users. You have your basic user where deductions and taxes will follow automatically. And then you have your advanced user where they can separate this out and they can do things selectively. And then you have your super user, even a smaller group, right? Level 3, probably OHR, OSR, that can do something.
OSR and budget office.
And budget office, and they have the abilities to edit someone else's adjustment.
Or recycle it if it's just stuck in workflow.
Right, okay.
Okay, I think we answered this already, but since it's asked again, let's answer it again. Will the project end date be displayed in PAAT?
It will be displayed but not enforced.
So it'll be part of the funding grid. You have the same columns on this funding grid that you're typically seeing on any type of EPAR funding grid, yes.
Okay, sorry about that. How do we change the earnings code if that's what we need to change?
PAAT is not for changing the earnings code. That would have to be a remedy ticket to payroll services.
But the question came up, they specified accounts. You can correct the account, such as changing between 513120 and 511120 if it's appropriate for that employee type. What you cannot change is the earning code, like an REG going to LON for longevity, for example.
Does this tool budget check with our OSR projects?
You have the option to do a budget check. There's a button called provisional budget check. It's optional. If you use the button, it will let you know if it passed or has an error. If there's an error, you'll still be allowed to proceed with submitting the retro.
That's all the questions that we have for the moment. Okay, here's a question. Thank you. How do we know who our advanced users are?
Contact your MOU lead.
Okay, any more questions? Why does Kelly always misspell her name? Who is this person?
It's
right.
too long.
All right, here's a question. Does this take care of the retros prior to 10/1?
No. Those paychecks are not available to be retroed in PAAT.
Or anywhere?
Or anywhere.
Okay, hold on, I think I missed one here. Is there going to be a print button?
I was waiting for that question. So you can download the Suspense report, and of course you're downloading that into Excel, so that's an easy way to print that one. There is no print button in PAAT.
But you can always do a screenshot and copy and paste that screenshot. Or if there is a list if there's a list that you're trying to download, you can always right-click in anything. PAAT's one of them that's included. right-click, choose Select All, right-click again and do Copy, and then you can paste that. Or otherwise, Print Screen is your option to print from PAAT currently.
As with all people, so it's not printer friendly.
Will the comments stay the same if the action is reopened?
Yes.
What do you do if you want to only view/verify payroll distribution?
Well, we have the labor expense report to view where the actuals are for that particular payroll. There is this ability within the tool to navigate to manage direct retro, where you can view any retro performed on an employee.
So if you have access to PAAT, you can go into Manage, you can go into Pending, and there's no departmental security, so to speak, right? So you can view anybody's adjustments. If you don't have access to the PAAT tool, but you have access to InfoPort, you could go to the labor and expense.
Access to that report will be based on PAAT access.
Okay.
Will there be additional training for advanced users?
There could be. Still undecided at this time. We're going to have the CBT posting shortly, and again, once it's in play and we get some feedback, we'll have a tricky transactions sheet, and we can do something for advanced users.
Any plan to add a print button? It is time-consuming in the current way.
We can definitely put that on the enhancements list.
With the labor report, are we restricted to our department employees, or will we be able to see anyone paid from our department sources?
You will be able to see anyone paid from your department sources.
Okay, any other questions?
So just one thing to piggyback on, we were talking about the notes and the comments and how they'll stay with it, and just one thing worthy of mentioning is that when you do recycle, whether you're the originator and you go into workflow and you want to recycle your work because you want to pull it out, or whether an approver recycles something and it sends it back to the approver, the originator, whenever you hit the recycle button, you're going to be prompted to put in the reason that you are terminating it from workflow. And they use that verbiage, and I just want to kind of throw that out there. You're just terminating it from workflow. You're not terminating the adjustment or the transaction. You're just pulling it out of workflow. You do have to put in a comment. That will stay with the transaction as well, and then it will go back to the originator.
All right, I think this is probably our last question. Will the actual pay period dates be on the transaction report?
It will be on the labor expense summary report.
I want to apologize again for the technical difficulties we had at the beginning, and let you know that this will be in highly edited form to take out all of our problems, posted on the CC Info website probably tomorrow after we have a chance to process it through the tool. Closing remarks?
Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Chris and Robin, for being here and answering all of these great questions. Thank you all for your participation and your patience, and good luck tomorrow morning when PAAT is live. Have a great afternoon.